Many people own boats which they don't really use for most of the year. However, this abandoned ship in Sydney hasn't been in use for a whopping 100+ years. The SS Airfield was built in the UK in 1911, later becoming an American Navy transport ship in World War II. In 1972, it was officially retired in Sydney, where it's admired by locals until today. The Heligan Monastery in Germany is almost 900 years old and is truly beautiful for its age. However, let's just say that this abandoned old building hasn't had an easy life. Built back in 1192, it has since been struck by lightning 3 times. Even for a building with such a long life, that is some pretty bad luck. When it burned down, the townspeople agreed that it should be left in its present condition. Most people don't know all that much about China. After all, the country has an incredibly long history along with many unique laws and practices. Well, apparently, China has its own underwater city. Back in 1959, the city of Fujiang was purposely flooded and its 300,000 residents evacuated to make way for the Xinan River hydropower station. It remains preserved at the bottom of the ocean until today. Maybe we should be thankful for this particular abandoned spot. After all, the only reason people would need to occupy these forts again is if there was another war, so let's just be grateful they haven't been needed in recent years. Designed by Guy Maunsell in 1942, they were meant to protect the UK during World War II. Today, they are a monument of the past. We're not sure how anyone could forget about a place, let alone a stunning ancient well in the middle of a city. But that is exactly what happened here. Since humanity developed more advanced water systems and moved past the need for wells, this beautiful old well in Sintra, Portugal was left to rot, but let's just say that all these years alone have done it good. It's pretty crazy to think that this gorgeous building is just sitting around with nothing to do. We'd love to get married there, or just wander around. The Orpheum Theater was built in 1912 and was active until 1959 when they officially stopped selling tickets. Today, some non-profit organizations are trying to raise money to bring this old building back to life. This picture pretty much looks like a scene out of our worst nightmares. But only 15 years ago, Nara Dreamland was a fun-filled and happy family destination for locals and tourists alike. Built in 1961, the amusement park officially shut its doors in 2006 due to a dwindling audience. Even though the park remains closed, security guards still patrol the grounds. The unfinished Fujiang Hotel is a 1,080 tall skyscraper in North Korea. You might be looking at this enormous skyscraper and thinking, wait, that place is actually empty? Amazingly, the answer is yes. Construction on this impressive hotel began in 1987. However, it was halted in 1992 when a massive famine struck. After remaining abandoned for 16 years, work was resumed in 2008, when it was coated in $150 million worth of glass. However, the hotel was never completed and remains empty until today. Yes, this is actually a real town and not something out of a weird dream you had last night. Gi Island was once a modest fishing village situated along the Yangtze River. However, since it was abandoned many years ago, nature decided to have some fun. The moss and ivy that now cover all the buildings give this town a truly surreal appearance. Antarctica is a fascinating and mysterious place that most of humanity doesn't know that much about. This is just one of the region's many hidden treasures. The Morsomfina is an abandoned bore that was once used for scientific research. The boat eventually sank about 30 feet underwater where it remains until today, and it's just stunning. How could someone casually forget about a beach home that they own in South Florida? It sounds pretty crazy, but there's actually a good reason for it. These luxurious vacation homes were built on the coast of Marco Island in 1980. Ever since then, they have faced hurricanes and shifting coastlines. Sadly, it just isn't cost-effective to try to repair them. This house clearly once had people living in it. We can tell from the unique color of the wallpaper and the cozy white doorway moldings. However, since no one has been living there for a long time, nature decided to take over. Back in 1908, a man discovered a diamond in his town, drawing people from all over the world who came in search of treasure. Sadly, once the area was dried up, it slowly became abandoned. Looking at this stunning photo, we appreciate road workers more and more, because this is pretty much what happens when you leave a road to its own devices without interfering. Basically, nature happens. When this road was abandoned, it started to deteriorate, and eventually became a part of the local river that now flows through it. Let's just say that no one has been commuting via this railway for many, many years. In fact, it has pretty much been totally forgotten. And when humans abandon a place, nature moves in and leaves its mark, which we can clearly see happen to this old metro rail in Paris. Today, people like to stop by and take a look at this amazing piece of history. The Sanzai Ufo Houses was a set of abandoned and never completed pod-shaped buildings in the Sanzai district of New Taipei City, Taiwan. Originally designed as vacation homes for U.S. military officers, development didn't go quite as planned, and the site officially closed down in 1980. It has since been demolished. We can learn so much about the history of humanity just by looking at old ruins of past societies. This old mill in Italy was abandoned in 1866. Once the town square Piazza Tasso was built, the humidity in the area rose, and the conditions became unbearable for the people working in the mill, leading to its closure and eventual abandonment. Normally, when something grows old and begins to decay, it loses its former beauty. However, that is clearly not the case with this old ship, which has somehow grown more beautiful over the years. While it's sad that this ship became stranded and was left to rot, the result is pretty incredible. This church was once frequented by the many worshippers who came to pray inside of its walls. However, the only life inside of this church today is the garden of plants that has naturally cropped up from underground and slowly taken over. Clearly, we totally underestimate nature's power, which is capable of conquering any man-made structure. Most locals won't tell you about this place, since it's highly discouraged to go there. But amazingly, smack in the middle of Bangkok is an abandoned 4-story shopping mall that has since been taken over by fish. In 1999, the mall burned down due to suspected arson and has remained abandoned ever since. Without a roof, the basement floor remains flooded with several feet of water and a lot of fish. China's Wonderland amusement park was set to be one of the most successful theme parks ever. Or so people thought. However, the promising theme park just outside of Beijing was abandoned mid-construction in 2014. The site of this unfinished theme park is truly a haunting and incredible sight. The second largest excavated hole in the world. Wow! Let's just say, we wouldn't want to be anywhere near this hole. Because it doesn't look like there would be anyone to help us if we fell in. The Mir mine is an open-pit diamond mine situated in Mirny, Siberia. The mine is 525 meters deep and has a diameter of 1,200 meters. So that's a pretty giant hole, to say the least, which is clear by how tiny the surrounding town looks. America has some pretty fabulous train stations, and Michigan Central Station is no exception. Built in 1913, it's clear that the building was once grand and stunning, back when business was booming. However, when the economy went bad, so did the state of this train station. It has been out of service for years and this is the stunning result. Let's just say that this church hasn't seen any worshippers for many years now. And it probably won't be holding mass services anytime soon. The Church of St. Nicholas is located on Mvrovo Lake, Macedonia, and is slowly being taken over by the lake itself. Once a popular destination of prayer, a nearby power plant caused the place to flood. Yet, amazingly, it's still standing today. Anyone who has seen the Netflix show Chernobyl will definitely be familiar with this sad story. Back in the 1970s, this town was home to many of the workers who commuted each day to Chernobyl. Following the nuclear accident of 1986, the town was evacuated because of the high levels of radiation. To this day, brave visitors must have their radiation levels monitored after the trip. Wow! Imagine walking through a forest when all of a sudden, you stumble upon this magical sight which is pretty much straight out of a fairy tale. We'd probably think we were seeing things. But amazingly, this stunning statue is real. Located in England's Lost Gardens of Heligan, this statue has clearly had plenty of time to sleep and has been slowly overtaken by nature. This medieval village was built on top of a mountain in the year 540. For 1,400 years, the town was full of life, but unfortunately, that all came to an end in 1972. A rock slide in 1963 frightened the citizens and forced them to abandon the old city. It remains eerily silent until today. This old theme park in Japan has been left to rot. The Gulliver's Travels Park opened its doors in 1997 in Kawaguchi, Japan. Based on the stories of Irish author Jonathan Swift, the amusement park not only had a unique concept, but also a stunning view of Mount Fuji in the distance. However, it only lasted 10 years before it eventually shut down. Today, the park is covered in graffiti and has been left to rot. Yup, somehow, this has managed to remain a secret to many. But yes, Bannerman Castle is an abandoned property located on New York's Polepel Island. The castle's owner, Francis Bannerman V, built the structure after he purchased American military surplus from the war with Spain. However, after 200 pounds of ammunition exploded in 1920, the mostly destroyed castle was abandoned. Sometimes, our plans in life don't always pan out, and we stop what we're doing halfway through without finishing it. That's pretty much to this housing complex in Keelung, Taiwan, which was abandoned midway through the construction process. Since then, nature has clearly taken over, and the result is haunting. An abandoned coal mine village off of Japan. It's pretty crazy that there's actually an entire island that is totally abandoned. Especially in a highly developed country like Japan. However, that is exactly the case with Hashima Island. Once a popular site due to its access to underwater coal mines, it became obsolete once Japan started using petroleum instead. Today, the island remains a cool piece of history. On Kaiokoi, a ghost town in Turkey. Anyone passing by this town in Turkey would probably be a little confused. After all, we would normally hear some cars honking or people talking when walking past a large town, but amazingly, Kaiokoi is totally empty. Many years ago, the Ottoman Empire banished every last indigenous person to neighboring Greece. After 1914, the place became totally deserted. People hiking through these woods in Belgium are in for a surprise. Because apparently, there is an abandoned collection of classic cars that have been decaying there for over 70 years. We're sure these cars were pretty valuable back in the day, although we're not sure how much they're worth these days, judging by the state of them. Built in 1921, Belgium's power plant M was one of the largest coal-burning power plants in the country. By 1977, the plant's giant tower was the main energy source in the area and was apparently able to cool down 480,000 gallons of water per minute. However, years later, It was found responsible for 10% of the total carbon dioxide emissions in Belgium and was subsequently shut down. This 4,000-step staircase in Hawaii. The Stairway to Heaven, also known as the Haiku Stairs, was a bridge built during World War II in Oahu, Hawaii as a way for soldiers to access an important radio antenna. In 2015, parts of the stairs were damaged. Eventually, the stairway was fenced off and is now considered highly dangerous and illegal to climb. Yup, there is actually a $1,000 fine if you get caught. We're only humans. Therefore, it's only natural that we procrastinate about getting things done, and sometimes, we forget about them altogether. But while the construction crew on this housing complex in Hong Kong were taking their time, Mother Nature was clearly one step ahead of them. This Belgian amusement park was closed in 2003 after a child got injured. Yikes. Let's just say that we won't be taking our families here for the day anytime soon. Pictured here is the former amusement park called Doddy Park, which is located in the city of Dijssel, Belgium. After a child was injured on one of their rides, the park was quickly shut down, and this is the creepy transformation years later. In case anyone was interested in facts you never knew you needed to know, here you go. Yup, this is a pretty surreal site located in the desert of Tunisia, which both locals and visitors are amazed by until today. Incredibly, it's just an old movie set, but somehow this weird futuristic structure looks like it's been there forever. Say what? This is a very good lesson not to leave your car unattended for too long, which the owner of this car had to do the hard way. We're guessing he wasn't actually looking for it and probably totally forgot it even existed, which is when nature decided that it would just take over from here. And there's an abandoned fisherman's town in Kamchatka, Russia. It's weird enough that there's an abandoned apartment complex on the beach. But this deteriorating structure has an even more unique story. For many years, this region was active and abundant with fish, and these houses belonged to the local fishermen. However, they were abandoned during the USSR as this fishing town was no longer profitable for the new government structure. Retired ferry at the Staten Island boat graveyard. It turns out that cemeteries aren't only for people. Yes, boats can have graveyards too, and there's apparently a giant one on Staten Island that not many people know about. This is the place where boats go to die, such as this giant structure that was once a ferry boat, and it's honestly a pretty haunting sight. An abandoned railway claimed by Mother Nature. It's pretty safe to say that these railway tracks haven't seen an actual train for many years. In fact, it looks like not a soul has entered this abandoned part of the forest, except for a few curious hikers who couldn't help but stop and take a picture. Clearly, when humanity is done with something, nature is happy to step in and take over. There is a subway station under City Hall in New York that no train stops at. There are many unique subway stations in New York City. However, none is quite as unusual as this one. Built directly under City Hall, loads of money went into this project, and it was expected to be a huge success. However, the station can no longer be used today since there are too many twists and turns for modern trains to safely navigate. Rumor has it that lucky commuters taking the number 6 train can see it in passing. There's a town full of empty wooden houses in Karelia, Russia. Very little is known about the mysterious abandoned village of Pegrema, where wooden houses rot slowly along the banks of Lake Onega. Located in the Republic of Karelia, Russia, this ghost town perfectly showcases the wooden architecture that's native to the region, even despite its state of decay. This Cambodian temple is slowly being consumed by nature. Meet Dapram, a historic Cambodian temple that is beloved by locals and tourists alike. But apparently, the jungle wants it back, which is clear from the trees which seem to be swallowing it up. Built way back in the 17th century, this temple has clearly stood the test of time, but it looks like nature will eventually reclaim it. Yellow Brick Road in a deserted Land of Oz theme park, North Carolina, USA. If you know someone who loves The Wizard of Oz, this might just be the perfect spot to take them on a date. However, you should just know that California's Land of Oz theme park has since been closed, so it might be a little creepy to have a picnic in these abandoned woods. But we have to say, this road has remained preserved pretty well, after years of rain and shine. Just a house in the countryside, Norway. Let's just say that the residents of this charming countryside home haven't visited the property for a long time. Or maybe they have, and they just somehow didn't notice the mini forest that's growing out of it. Clearly, when we leave things alone for long enough, they become something else entirely. There's an old castle in the middle of a park in Sintra, Portugal. If you stroll around Portugal's Sintra Cascais Natural Park for long enough, you might get lucky and stumble upon this incredible sight. Most countries don't have old castle ruins lying around their parks, but in Portugal, one of the oldest countries in the world, this clearly isn't that much of an odd sight. A 14-story abandoned presidential hotel, Georgia, USA. It's pretty creepy to see a large abandoned hotel. Yet, that is exactly the site that Atlanta, Georgia residents drive by every day. Built in 1973 and abandoned in 2012, this large structure has remained empty for quite a few years. However, it would be quite a project to tear it down, so it remains standing until today. This larger-than-life statue is buried 25 feet underwater. If we were innocently going scuba diving and came across this giant statue, let's just say that it would definitely make our day. That is definitely the feeling of anyone who comes across the Christ of the Abyss statue at Key Largo, Florida, an almost 9-foot-tall statue that was buried 25 feet underwater and has twin statues in Grenada and Italy. There's a stunning abandoned church in the middle of Gary, Indiana. This beautiful Gothic ruin was a result of the Indiana steel industry. Once a popular place to pray, the City Methodist Church of Gary, Indiana is the perfect example of urban decay in the Rust Belt. After decades of arson, vandalism, and neglect, the building looks totally different, and the result is pretty incredible to behold. A Greek merchant ship has been sitting at the bottom of the ocean since 1983. If you're planning on going scuba diving anytime soon, you might want to look up the location of this mysterious ship. The Guyanus D was loaded with softwood in April 1983, bound for Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Unfortunately, it never arrived at its destination and remains intact at the bottom of the ocean years later. Remains of the abandoned penal colony on Ross Island, India. Some places just get creepier over time. Pictured here are the remains of a former penal colony in India, which was known for its cruel practices and harsh treatment of prisoners. Interestingly, it was once called the Paris of the East due to the busy social life enjoyed by the British officers working there. Or what remains of a forgotten old palace, Belgium. We're no architecture experts. However, just judging this structure, it's clear that it was once a grand and impressive palace. Somehow, elements of the original architecture managed to stand the test of time, even though the place was abandoned many years ago. Even the living room furniture is still intact. It just goes to show that things back then were made to last.